Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. We are very excited today to be talking some Star Wars Clone Wars, not Star Wars The Clone Wars, but Star Wars Clone Wars with you all. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Thanks for listening. And welcome in once again, Joey. We and I just got done finishing, or just got finished watching the. I guess it was separated into two movies, but the original Star Wars Clone Wars series. Joey, what did you think? What were your initial thoughts and reactions to it?
My I am sad that I am just watching it now, and I really wish I was a part of all the hoopla. I'm not sure how well received it was. I guess that's something we could talk about, but um I wish I had watched that before watching episode 3 uh when it came out in what 2005?
So the very first episode, so the way it's divided up now, I don't know if it was divided up this way when it was first released, but the last five episodes were all 12 minutes long, which is now considered volume three, or like the if you're watching it, if you watch it on Disney Plus, which it is available there, um, it is like that second 60-minute movie or part two, that 60-minute movie.
Right,
And
part 2.
that part came out all in March of 2005. That part two or volume three, if you're looking at it in terms of how it's categorized now. So
Mm,
yeah, the month prior to, or I guess month and a half prior to Revenge of the Sith
right.
releasing.
Yeah, so going into watching, the last episode of the prequels, I think it would have been nice to have had all of that going in. Although there were some characters that were, you know, appeared and aren't in episode 3. So,
Hmm.
I just but yeah, I think it would have been really fun to be part of that fandom to have seen all of that.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the characters that appeared and then didn't, show up in the movies. Obviously, I think the main one that everyone points to is usually Asajj Ventress, who,
Hmm.
and maybe even a better point we can make is there seems to be a very clear distinction between like the 2003, 2004, and then the 2005 episodes, which were made to come to kind of like lead the viewer into Star Wars Episode 3. Uh, Very different shift in. I mean, you mentioned it while we were live reacting to it. By the way, if you're listening to this and you haven't watched our live reaction to Star Wars Clone Wars, that will also be up and available at the time of you're listening to this podcast. But yeah, you mentioned it while we were watching live that first or second episode. I think it may have been the Anakin and Padme scene. Maybe it just felt very different. More talking, I think, is actually what you said, if I remember right, when we were watching it. That like in the first episode of the third volume, they talked more than they did like all in the first two volumes.
That's right. I mean, the first 2 volumes was very and it probably has to speak about how they were released. I mean, you were mentioning to me that they were what 2 3 minute episodes released every day for a certain amount of time.
Right.
So in those 2 3 minutes, you don't have time for a lot of talking. You get to right to the action, and especially with all the clone, the ARC troopers that were involved in it hadn't said like 5 words the entire first 2 volumes, and now we've gotten actual names for some of them like right off the gate in the third volume,
Yeah.
which was interesting. But I think it probably had to do a lot more with how those were released and who the audience was, because these were on Cartoon Network. Is that correct?
Yeah. So this show was originally released on Cartoon Network, created by I'm always mess up his name, but it's Tartakovsky. And he's also probably more so than I mean, he's definitely known for creating Star Wars Clone Wars, but probably even more so than Star Wars Clone Wars, he's known for making Samurai Jack, Powerpuff Girls, and I believe it's Dexter's Lab were his big three,
Okay, yeah.
other than Star Wars, which were all also Cartoon Network. So he was like the Cartoon Network guy in the early 2000s, basically.
Yeah, and I'll admit I haven't watched any of those other cartoons, but I do know a little bit of at least the art style,
Mm-hmm.
and it very much is the the same person creating all of those.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that's something we also talked about and mentioned while we were watching them was I think I probably made too many jokes about it, but I kept saying like you can do anything in 2D animation.
Yeah.
I mean, you really do see the difference though between if you watch Star Wars Clone Wars and then watch Star Wars The Clone Wars or vice versa. It doesn't really matter what order. Um, Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you watch The Clone Wars, the 3D animated one that was 2008 to 2000 whatever year we just got, 2019 or whenever the most recent season 7 ended. Um, the lightsaber fights, while they're still animated and there's like some craziness happening compared to the movies, they still feel like they're happening within real space. You watch like a
Right.
2D animated lightsaber battle, like the Anakin versus Asajj lightsaber battle,
Hmm.
and the background is moving to give the impression that they're like flying through the air while they're fighting,
Right.
and they're like
Right.
jumping unrealistic distances between trees and swinging from
Yeah. Yeah.
vines. So it's just like chaos and madness, and so it kind of adds to the effect or to the animation style, and I think it makes for some pretty unique scenes. But,
Yeah, and the most impressive was Mace. Whatever they did with Mace was above and beyond I had ever seen anything Mace or any other Jedi do. Especially the speed bag punch into
yeah,
many a droid that we saw a couple times. And the flying of a ship of a of a cruiser
like he
using
was
just
holding a
his hands.
saddle of a horse.
Yeah, yeah, just riding around Coruscant, or I forget if it was Coruscant or not, but
Yeah.
just you know, and being able to slice up other ships with his lightsaber. Yes, definitely a 2D move. But it was fun. I One thing I love about art in any way is the interpretations you can have of a story that we all know.
Hmm.
Although maybe we don't know these specific stories, just the way they brought it to life was, it was a choice. It was how they decided to do it this way. You could look at how things look in this version of Clone Wars. In the Clone Wars that we know, with Ahsoka and all of that. And you could look at things like even like Rebels or Resistance or Visions. We have all of these different interpretations of these stories in Star Wars, and it really just it tells a story just in a totally different way, and I really like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I think seeing Star Wars from these different perspectives, like this style. I think another good example of that is Visions. I think I always go back to that show
Hmm.
from in terms of like I think as a kid especially, it's easy to watch Star Wars and then see something that is marketed as Star Wars, but different. And as a kid, you think that's not Star Wars. That's not my Star Wars. But then
Hmm.
I think especially the older you get and the more um, I think the more you really understand and really grow to love what Star Wars is, when you receive these different interpretations and adaptations of something that you grew to love initially, I think you gradually find yourself loving those other different styles and adaptations more. And I think this is one of the best examples. This and Visions, I think, are for me the biggest two examples of something that is not traditionally Star Wars, but something that I still love because it's a cool take on what is traditional. It's an untraditional take on traditional Star Wars, which I've
Right. Yeah.
grown to really, really like with this show, especially.
Yeah, and we don't even have to talk about like animated versus we could I mean we can talk about animated versus non-animated and how these stories are told, and obviously with like a real live cast, you're going to have different stories. I mean, we talked about when we were covering Andor the entire time, if did this feel Star Wars or didn't it
Yeah,
feel Star Wars, we kind of told that line, and what we got out of it, maybe it wasn't the Star Wars that we're used to, but we got a great story at the end of it.
yeah.
Um and I mean, I've seen like lately on Twitter, or how like powerful, this Andor was. I know we're
Hmm.
not talking about Andor, but how powerful Andor was. And we will argue like, did this feel like Star Wars? We kept saying it was like a spy movie, the entire time. But what we got out of it was a great storyline. We can't wait for season two. Arguably maybe the one of the best Star Wars TV shows that we've seen live action.
Yeah.
So I think it's and but that was again an interpretation. This the directors choices and decisions and how they wanted to interpret and tell these stories. You can say that about different art styles and animation, or you could say it in how you direct a show like that. So yeah, one of the best things about Star Wars are all of these mediums, and we've said it time and time again. This is the time to be a Star Wars fan because you've got so many different things that you can look at. You can go back to things that you haven't watched, like what we did tonight. And for everyone who doesn't know, I never watched this series. That's kind of why we wanted to do this, to see my reactions and my true reactions. Ben helped me along the way, my Star Wars historian here. Asked him a couple questions. But yeah, I think it was yeah, I definitely enjoyed this series, and like I said, I'm mad that I didn't see it on the first try.
Yeah, it's I mean, honestly for me, I had seen I think in my memory of watching it, I remembered a lot of like the main fight scenes or the main lightsaber duels, like obviously the Anakin Asajj duel, and like the Grievous duel when he's facing all the Jedi in the ship when they're cornered or when they're in that central ship surrounded by the battle droids. But a lot of it was stuff that I didn't remember too, and so for me, it felt like even though I had seen it before, a lot of it felt like I was experiencing it for the first time, just because I hadn't watched it all the way through in quite some time. So um,
Right.
I felt like I was kind of right there with you, experiencing a lot of it,
Yeah.
for the first time in some ways. So
And I like the one thing that we did mention was that very very long pause between Asajj. It was Asajj and Anakin, right,
yeah,
in their battle, where she had the high ground, which of course I had to make the joke about, and he was kind of waiting for her to make a move, or I'm not sure exactly what the holdup was, but it was a very standoff westernish type of feel where you're just kind of waiting for something to happen. And I think you said that actually you counted one time it was actually like almost like a minute long or something like that.
yeah. If you start counting from the moment that like Asajj takes the high ground to the moment that Anakin reacts to jumping at her, it's like a full 60 seconds that they just stare at each other.
So that was 1 minute of the 2 minute episode was of them
Pretty much,
standing.
yeah. Although I think that one's one of the longer ones. I think that one
Oh,
is like 3.5 because it's literally just the whole
okay.
battle. Um,
Yeah, right.
but yeah, I mean, a good portion of the episode is just them like staring at each other.
Right, yeah. And that's one thing I like about this 2D, style is that you could just go on forever with these lightsaber fights.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were super long. The one where Grievous and the Magna Guards were
Hmm.
chasing them through the subway system, whatever, that was super long. And you you always want like a great finishing move whenever you get the longer these fights are, you want some good finishing moves. And with 2D you're able to do like the craziest things, which is pretty fun. um and I'll mention again, Mace just absolutely destroying these droids with just his fist, the
Yeah.
Mace fist.
Half the time
That's
he's
good. That's
like,
a new jet.
I don't need my lightsaber. I'm just gonna use my hands.
Yeah, that's right. So no, yeah, we were talking about what was that, Style 7? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, yeah. Form 7.
Form 7? Yeah, I think we saw a lot of that
Mm.
on this series.
Yeah, I think I said this to you while we were reacting too, but I think a complaint amongst fans of the prequels, is that you don't really get to see, other than like his fight with Palpatine at the end of Episode 3. You don't really get to see too much of like why Mace is considered to be as powerful as he is within the Jedi Order and the Jedi Council. And so this show in many ways kind of just felt like the Tartakovsky and the creators being like, all right, Mace is just gonna be like that guy, and he's just gonna be, he feels like the strongest character in this show, and it doesn't even feel close.
Right.
You're
Yeah. Yeah.
watching it and you're like, how is Mace like way stronger than everyone else?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they for what it's worth, they give Mace props in the original Clone Wars.
They sure do. What were your thoughts about, because we've uh, was that really the first, I guess, droids and those where I'm trying to think of animated series within Star Wars. Was that one of the
I think there was
real first ones?
the
I mean, there's a droids
yeah, I was gonna
and like,
say
yeah.
the first one I'm pretty sure was Droids, which I
Mm-hmm.
think came out between New Hope and Empire in like '79. I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there may have been an Ewok one too between
All right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Return of the Jedi
Jedi.
and like within the first year or two after it came out, which probably would have been like the mid '80s. But other than that,
Was there a Boba Fett one?
oh, that's a great
Something with
question.
Boba Fett. I feel like there's definitely a bounty hunter Boba Fett cartoon that I'm thinking of
Maybe
where he,
that doesn't sound.
yeah,
It sounds somewhat familiar. I don't know why.
yeah. Because I'm thinking of the figure. That's how I know there's an action figure that's
Oh
like the
yeah.
old school like Boba Fett. He is like wearing blue or something like that.
If anyone listening or
Yeah,
watching
yeah, that's right.
knows the answer, comment in the YouTube comments. Let us know if there's any popular Star Wars
Or did I just get Mandela affected there?
90s Star Wars cartoons. Maybe
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
missing out
yeah.
on some Star Wars cartoons from that era. Another thing I wanted to touch on with you know these episodes, the characters within them, particularly the way that Anakin and Obi-Wan are portrayed. More so Anakin, but Obi-Wan too. Um, for lack of a better word, Anakin just kind of feels like a brat for a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not the last few because he's supposed to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like older at that point, and
Right.
um,
He's got a little bit more. He's got more of a chip on the shoulder then, though, like a little bit more swag in his step by then.
yeah, but like I don't know, their relationship to me in this show feels very like it's all the dirty like angry moments that you maybe don't get in the movies, like
Mm-hmm.
no dad, I'm not going to bed at 10 p.m., I'm staying up till 10:30, like that kind of
Yeah.
vibe to it.
Right.
um and then then the dad's like, well then you're grounded, Anakin.
Yeah.
It's just like there's these constant
Mm-hmm.
fights, but in like the first season especially, and into the
Mm-hmm.
second season, where Obi-Wan and is just kind of like, "Don't do it, Anakin, don't do it," and then just this willful ignorance from Anakin to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
like, "You're breaking up. Sorry, Master."
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't. What do you
Exactly.
think about their relationship in the show?
I mean, I, I've mentioned this before, but Anakin in those first couple episodes of season episode 1, episode 2, and kind of a little in episode 3, I wasn't the hugest fan, unfortunately, of just Anakin himself because of things like that. Um, but I feel like that is the hero's journey all the time within Star Wars. You got to be a little bratty in order to become great. Let's look at Luke when he was first on there. He's just like, "Oh, I wanted to go to
Tashi
Tashi
Station to pick up
Station."
some
Yeah.
power converters.
And you want to talk about annoying little kid Ezra? Oh my God. Like
It took more than 2 seasons for me to like
yeah.
Ezra in
Yeah.
Rebels.
I might, I'm not sure, I forget if I even still like him yet. So I mean that, but the in order to become great, you got to be a little annoying apparently.
Mm,
So I think that, um but yeah, so I kind of viewed him already as that. I hate sand and all. you know and I don't know, no offense to Hayden, but I just, he didn't necessarily do it for me when I was watching them when I originally watched them. So kind of seeing him in this light, and I mentioned this as much, and we could talk about the voice acting in this as well. Um, they sounded like they were trying to be Hayden in these in
yeah,
some of these episodes, not really taking themselves. Unlike when the newer Clone Wars came out with Matt Lanter, I think his name is, or Latner, I think. he kind of made it his own, his own Anakin.
Oh yeah, I mean when I
And
put those two voices side by side and I watch them speak as the animated characters, you know, Clone Wars and the Clone Wars Anakin, like the Clone Wars Anakin, that is Anakin to me.
right, yeah,
And I'm listening to Clone Wars, original Clone Wars Anakin speak, and like the words are coming out of his mouth, and I'm like, I don't know if that's him talking. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
right, yeah,
Yeah.
right. So it's like I said, it sounds like it's an impersonation of Hayden Christensen's Anakin, you know.
Yeah.
So, um, and you mentioned, you know, with the voice, whoever voiced Padme
I think the
was
actress's
in.
name is Gray Deslale,
Mhm.
Gray something.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, some of these, you know, some of these voice actors didn't hit for me. You know, like hers was a little bit, you know, you kind of mentioned Valley Girlish, and I kind of
Yeah.
agree with that. Um, Obviously Yoda and Obi-Wan, they kind of nailed it because those, I believe, those are the same actors, voice actors that
Hmm.
do the Clone Wars as well.
Yeah. And 3PO.
The Clone Wars and 3PO, of course. Anthony Daniels is all over it at 3PO. Um, but yeah, so I did like the performances for the most part, but I think yeah, some of them didn't quite hit for me. But going back to your original question, yeah, I think the relationship that they had was very much, you know, mentor and, you know, the student, you know, and a lot of reprimanding. But you kind of saw that in the prequels where, you know, one, you know, Anakin wasn't listening to what he did, and I think this just reemphasizes it, you know, really puts it in, and almost to the point where it's like a joke, almost a meme, you know, where you're just like, all right, you know, kind of. And I don't know if that, again, if that's because it's the 2 to 3 minute episode, you got to really stack it in there. But I think it was, you know, as much as you know, as my thoughts of Anakin at this point, I'm like, yeah, he's a little bit of a brat, so that fits my my stereotype of him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Clone Wars Anakin versus the Clone Wars Anakin.
Right.
I think I'm still siding with the Clone Wars.
Same. Same.
Uh, Another maybe less prominent character for most of this show, but we get to see her a lot more towards the last few episodes, and I was curious on getting your thoughts on her, is Shaak Ti.
Yeah.
Because Shaak Ti is notorious for having um, the most non-canonical deaths in. I don't know if you knew this or not. She has the most
Mm.
non-canonical deaths in Star Wars history. Um, in fact, in Revenge of the Sith, he has two deleted scenes of her dying in completely different ways.
Really?
One of them she's killed by Grievous, and the other one she's killed by Anakin during Order 66. Uh, and then I think the other ones are in Force Unleashed. She Star Killer kills her,
Really?
and then I'm leaving two of them out, but I know there's five. Um,
There's 5 ways she dies.
yeah, yeah.
Where I mean, what is the canonical way then?
I don't
Was it just
think
Order
there. I
66?
don't think there is a canonical way. That is a good
Hmm.
question, though. Although I feel like in a recent Clone Wars thing, we get some sort of like flashback and seeing her killed by a blue lightsaber. So I
Okay.
think that is technically canonical,
Okay.
which would imply that it was Anakin, obviously. But
Right.
I think that is, someone can fact check me though if that
Yeah.
is incorrect. But anyways, she's a fun character, and I wish she would have
Yeah.
been utilized more. But she's in all these deleted scenes and all this like EU
Yeah.
and Legends content, and then she doesn't
Right.
get any love in the actual canon stuff.
No, I really liked her character. I loved seeing Luminara and Barrisoffy.
Yep.
That was very cool.
Kit
You know,
Fisto, Kiadi
Kit
Mundi,
Fisto.
Ayla
You know,
Sakura.
does Kit Fisto is Kit Fisto only in the water or the gym? Because holy, that dude is ripped. Okay. Um, yeah, so yeah, we definitely saw a little bit of more of the Jedi that, you know, you don't see as, you know, not as featured as often. But I was actually happy to see Shaak Ti. There's a game that I used to play. It was called Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. It's one
Hmm.
of the MMO. It's the MMO one.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of her like main leader role is like leading clone troopers
Oh, okay.
inside of that. So if you pair her up with like the clone troopers, all of them get buffed,
Nice.
basically, and they get like they'll get extra turns and all that stuff. So like in playing that, I'm like, I want to know more about Shakti. So I was happy to see. What a weird way to. It's always goes back to gaming, but but I was happy to see more of Shakti in this. It really, and what watching this has done was it really makes me want to go watch all the animated stuff in Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance, Visions, everything. I just want to watch it all again because of this little React video that we did.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely gets you more excited about the whole animated universe as a whole. A real quick side note: have you seen Resistance all the way through?
I have,
See,
yes.
that is the only Star Wars show that I started and didn't finish, and I want to
Okay,
give it another chance, but I could not get into
we
it
could
the
do it.
first time.
We could
So
do it. Well, we gotta do it. We
we
can do
might
it.
have to react to Resistance sometime. You never know.
That's right. It's not 3 volumes though. It is a whole 2 seasons. So-
Oh, I don't know if I can do it. We'll see. um, very last thing I was gonna say in terms of like uh, characters is that I think there is a very clear, and we talked about this a little bit at the very beginning, but there's a very clear decision between the first 2 volumes and the third volume, those last 5 episodes, um, where that everything they were doing in those last 5 felt like it was meant to be geared towards audience. Um, what's the word? Like to prepare you essentially for episode 3. So that having said that, there is a very active decision to not include Asajj Ventress in that last volume, which really crushes you when you watch the Clone Wars and you see how like cool of a character she is. And then like, there's the I think it's Dark Disciple is the name of the
Dark
book.
Disciple,
Like
so good.
she is such a cool character, and it pains me that we didn't get her in live action, and the last volume of Clone Wars. But you know, in a different world, Asajj may
Yeah.
have been the villain of Revenge of the Sith.
Listen, I would have rather had Asajj there than Grievous.
I mean, yeah,
Easily,
I think I would too.
easily,
Yeah, I think most people would actually,
easily.
looking back at
But
it.
I wonder if it's the whole rule of two that could be confusing to because
Sure.
you're gonna have to deal with her and Dooku and the Emperor, kind of and resolve that in that episode, as
Yeah.
well as go towards the Empire, the building of the Empire and all that stuff. So and then because we know Vader's going to be there, so I think it would be too much to resolve in that one movie. But I agree, if there was a way to get Asajj into some live action series or anything, even though we know what happens to her, or maybe not. I don't know if everyone knows, but we know what happens with Asajj at some point in canon. Yeah, such a cool character. I'm glad at least we got her a good amount of her in Clone Wars, and we're able to kind of see a little bit of her story as well. And she's also in Jedi Lost.
Mm-hmm.
The Dooku the Jedi Lost audio book.
Yep.
So there's definitely a lot out there. So if you guys don't know about Asajj Ventress, go find out about her because she is dope.
Arguably the most underrated Star Wars character.
Yes.
I could make a pretty good case for that, I think.
No, I think everybody would. I mean,
Yeah.
such a good character.
Um, all in all, I think pretty great show. I hope you enjoyed watching it for the first time. And
I did.
what were your closing? What is your closing thoughts? And maybe if you had to give it a letter grade as a whole, I know that's hard because it was like over
Yeah.
2 hours of content that we watched. But
Well, yeah, it's hard because it's like it is dated a little bit.
Mhm.
You have this vision of. I mean, we've gotten the full 7 seasons of Clone Wars. We've got Rebels. We've got so you almost inadvertently pairing that up, or putting it up against those shows as well. Um, but for what it was, for when it was, I'll give it like a B, a solid B. because again, it gave me that FOMO that I wasn't there when it actually happened. So it's pretty good because I'm sure if I watched it during that time in 2005, I'd been like, "This is the greatest thing." I would
Yeah.
have been right there with my nephews, like collecting all the ARC troopers, and But yeah, I think it was definitely a great show. Um, and although it's non-canonical now, right? I think we were kind of discussing this. I think up to that point there wasn't a canon, non-canon type of thing.
Hmm.
Uh, so that would have been the Bible at that point. We would have believed it, and that this was part of the whole overall story of Star Wars. So yeah, I'll give it a B. I really enjoyed it. I again just seeing Mace doing his thing was amazing to see. To see kind of Obi-Wan, the film. Well, now I guess familiar voice of Obi-Wan to me, James Arnold Taylor,
Hmm.
who was also the voice in Obi-Wan in the other Clone Wars. And yeah, so I think it was just a great show. I'm glad we did it, and it was a lot of fun.
Even the awkward tension between Anakin and Padme.
It maybe B minus.
Yeah, yeah. Dock it half a letter grade for that one
Yeah,
scene.
yeah. We need to have a draft of uncomfortable moments in Star Wars. That's what we
That
need to
is
do.
easily
Because
top three.
we've got that one. We've got Karn and Miro.
Oh
We've got
yeah.
a whole draft.
We're on a streak now of like weird couple scenes in Star
Mhm.
Wars. If you
Yeah.
don't know what we're referencing, go check out our live reaction to the whole Star Wars Clone Wars episodes that are also published and available on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. Again, we loved the show. It's fun to kind of go back and look at some of these older Star Wars episodes, like Star Wars Clone Wars. There's also a few other ones that we have our eyes on, and maybe some newer ones too, like Star Wars Resistance. But if you have any recommendations for us for anything we should cover, watch, or react to in terms of Star Wars content, let us know down in the YouTube comments what you think would be something good that we could react to. And of course, if you ever want to hit us up on other socials, you can email us hothhangout@gmail.com or tweet at us at Hoth Hangouts. And I think that is going to almost about wrap it up for us. Like Joey said earlier in the pod, we are really, really excited to be Star Wars fans in the current day and age, and we have so much to look forward to in terms of Bad Batch coming up here in 3-ish weeks, 3.5-ish weeks. And not next week, but 2 weeks from now, we'll be covering, doing a recap on Bad Batch Season 1. Leading into season 2 of Bad Batch the following week, which we'll be covering and I think live reacting to as well. And then before we even get to any of that, next week, our plan is to watch the Star Wars Christmas special, which I've never seen. I don't know.
I've never seen it.
Oh, you've never seen it either. So
I've never seen it
we're
either.
going to both be watching together the Star Wars Christmas special for the first time ever, which I think probably came out sometime back around like probably around Empire, sometime around 1980 is my guess. I don't know that off the top of my head, but should be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that grade's gonna be. I'll to be honest.
Yeah. Maybe lower than a B minus is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Joey, any closing thoughts before we head off for this one?
I just gotta say again, great time to be a Star Wars fan, and go read and watch and consume everything Star Wars because it is all there for us. So go watch them. Go watch these movies and animated series. Go read the books, comic books, everything.
Do it. Speaking of other things,
Do
Star
it.
Wars. I don't know. Do it. Something we didn't. I don't know if we talked about that on this episode yet, but the most recent trailer for Jedi Survivor recently came out at the Game Awards, and so I guess we'll link down in the description a direct link to the trailer to that if you haven't seen it yet and you want to give it a watch. So
and play the video games. More Star
and play
Wars.
the video games. March 16th, 17th, that comes out too.
Yeah,
so
they're on there. Yeah,
be on the lookout for that. Bad Batch, Ahsoka, Jedi Survivor, Mando season 3, Mandalorian season 3. all at the Acolyte, which I think is still coming out, hopefully at the very end of 23 or maybe 24, but
24,
probably
yeah.
24. But nonetheless, lots of Star Wars to be excited about, as we said. Appreciate y'all listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast, and we will catch y'all in the next one. May the Force be with you.